It's 330 BC. A fire is raging. Flames climb into the sky. Smoke fills the air. Stone columns crack. Wooden roofs burn to ash. This is Persepolis, the greatest palace the ancient world had ever seen, and now it's being destroyed. Destroyed by one man, Alexander the Great. Why would he burn such a masterpiece? Why destroy a palace like this? What made it so important? To understand why Persepolis burned, you first need to understand what it meant. Alexander's soldiers storm the gates. They rush inside. They break open the treasure rooms. Gold, silver, jewels, piles of them, and in minutes everything is taken. Then someone lights a fire, and the fire spreads. It burns for days. The flames blacken the stone carvings. The heat melts the metal nails that held the palace together. Why did Alexander do it? Revenge. Years earlier, the Persians had burned Greek temples. Alexander wanted payback, but this was not only revenge, it was also a message, a loud message. The Persian Empire was finished, and Alexander was now the king of the world. But how did Persepolis become so grand? How did it become the greatest palace of its time? To answer that, we must go back 60 years before the fire to a king named Darius. Darius was a warrior. He was a leader, and under his rule, the Persian Empire became the largest empire the world had ever seen. It stretched from Egypt to India, from the Mediterranean Sea to the mountains of Central Asia. Darius needed a palace, but not just any palace. He wanted a palace that sent a message, a palace that said, "I am the most powerful king on earth." So he chose a special location, high in the mountains, in what is now Iran, southwest Iran to be exact. This region is called the Iranian Plateau. It is dry. It rarely rains, but it has something important: wood and stone that matter a lot. Because Darius did not want a palace made of mud bricks. He wanted stone that would last forever. The Iranian Plateau was once called Persia, and this new palace city had a name. Darius called it Parsa. That means the city of the Persians. Later, the Greeks gave it another name, Persepolis, and that is the name we still use today. But the Iranians have their own name for it, the throne of Jamshid. Jamshid was a mythical king in Persian legends, a king who connected heaven and earth. Darius wanted his palace to feel like that, a throne fit for a god king. So he built it on a massive platform, 18 meters high. That's about the height of a 6-story building. And the platform itself was enormous. It covered 150,000 square meters. That's about 21 football fields. The platform was made entirely of stone, huge stone blocks, held together with iron and lead clamps. No mortar, no glue, just engineering. But why build it so high? Power. Darius wanted people to look up to him, literally. To reach the palace, visitors had to climb 111 steps. But these steps were unusual. They were wide, very wide, so wide that 10 horses could walk up side by side. The climb felt easy, but the message was clear. You are entering the king's palace. You are here to bow. Now, let's step back for a moment, because Persepolis did not exist alone. It was part of a much bigger world. The ancient Middle East was divided into two major regions. First, the Iranian Plateau, dry, rocky, mountainous. That's where Persepolis stood. Second, the Fertile Crescent, also known as Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers. Those rivers were the Tigris and the Euphrates. They flowed through what is now Iraq. Mesopotamia itself had two major regions, Babylon in the south, Assyria in the north. Unlike the Iranian plateau, this land was rich and green. The rivers flooded every year, and those floods made the soil perfect for farming. In simple terms, Mesopotamia was the richest farmland in the ancient world. It was the empire's breadbasket, and Darius understood this very well. So he built Persepolis high on the plateau. From there, he could control Mesopotamia. He could rule it, and he could take its wealth. But here's something important. Persepolis was not the daily capital of the empire. Darius did not work there every day. That city was Susa. Susa was in Mesopotamia. Persepolis had a different purpose. It was a ceremonial capital, a city of ceremonies, a city of festivals, a city of power. The biggest festival held there was Nowruz, the Persian New Year. Every year, leaders from across the empire came to Persepolis. Kings, governors, envoys. They brought gifts. They bowed to the king. They celebrated the new year together. This was politics, simple politics. Darius wanted the whole world to see one thing. Everyone obeys me. Everyone brings tribute to me. Now let's walk through the palace itself and see what made Persepolis so extraordinary. The first building visitors saw was the main gate, the gate of all nations. Every guest passed through this gate. The message was simple. This empire includes everyone, all nations, all peoples, all cultures. Beyond the gate stood the largest buildings. The most famous was the Apadana Palace, the great audience hall. This is where Darius received foreign leaders, where he held grand ceremonies. The hall measured 60 by 60 meters, and its roof was supported by 72 stone columns. Each column stood 20 meters tall, taller than a 5-story building, and these columns were not plain. Their tops were carved into animals, bulls, lions, symbols of royal power. Even the staircases were special. The stairs leading to the Apadana were covered in carvings, beautiful carvings. They show 23 different nations. Each group bring gifts to the Persian king. You can see their clothing, you can see their hairstyles, and you can see their gifts: gold, silver, animals, spices. These carvings were not just decoration, they were propaganda. They showed the world something important. Darius ruled a vast empire, an empire of many peoples. Next to the Apadana stood another great building, the Throne Hall, also known as the 100-column hall. This hall was even larger, 70 meters by 70 meters, and inside stood 100 columns, each about 13 meters tall. This was where kings were crowned, where royal councils were held. The columns here had a special design, 2 bulls facing each other, a symbol of royal power, a symbol of cosmic order. Nearby stood another building, the Tachara, the palace of Darius himself. This was his private residence. It was smaller than the Apadana, but more elegant. Its walls were covered in fine carvings. People later called it the Persian treasure. Next to it stood the Hadish, the palace of Xerxes, Darius' son. After Darius died, Xerxes finished the construction of Persepolis. The Hadish measured 40 by 55 meters, and it had a unique L-shaped layout. Its walls were decorated with lotus flowers, a design borrowed from Egyptian art. And then there was the treasury, the place where the empire's wealth was stored: gold, silver, precious objects. The walls were thick stone built to protect unimaginable wealth. But when Alexander arrived, he took it all, and then he burned it. There was also the royal harem, the residence of the king's wives and children. It also had an L-shaped layout, with a main wing and a western wing, but Here's the most fascinating thing about Persepolis. It was not purely Persian. It was a blend of cultures from across the empire. Darius invited craftsmen from everywhere: Greek stone carvers, Egyptian column designers, Babylonian scribes. Even the inscriptions reflect this diversity. They were written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, Babylonian. Why 3? Because the empire spoke 3. It was a message. Your language matters. Your culture matters. But the king still rules you. This was the secret of the Persian Empire. It ruled differently. It did not erase cultures. It allowed them to survive. But it required loyalty and tribute. Compare that with the Assyrians. They ruled through fear. They destroyed cities. They forced people to move. The Persians ruled differently. They ruled with tolerance. They allowed conquered peoples to keep their religions, their languages, their customs, and Persepolis became the perfect symbol of that idea. A palace of many cultures, Egyptian columns, Greek carving styles, Persian architecture. But why build such a beautiful palace? Why not a dark temple like the Egyptians? Because the Persians had a different past. They were once nomads. They lived in tents. They moved across the land. For them, royal power was not about temples. It was not about being close to the gods. It was about wealth, about tribute, about showing the world your greatness. Egyptian temples were dark, mysterious, oppressive. They showed the power of the gods. Persepolis was different. It was open. It faced the mountains. It faced the sky. It showed the power of the king. The Persians followed a religion called Zoroastrianism. They believed in many gods. They honored fire. But their palace was not a temple. It was a palace of power, a palace of celebration, a palace of empire. And then Alexander arrived. 330 BC. He defeated the Persian king Darius III. He captured the empire, but he still burned Persepolis. Why? Some historians say it was an accident, a drunken party, a fire that spread out of control. But most believe it was intentional revenge. Years earlier, the Persians had burned Greek temples in Athens. Alexander sent a message: "You burned ours. Now we burn yours." The fire lasted for months. Wooden roofs turned to ash. Stone columns cracked in the heat. Beautiful carvings turned black with smoke. When the flames finally died, Persepolis was gone. The greatest palace of its time was now a ruin. Alexander himself died only a few years later. His empire broke apart. Persepolis was abandoned. For centuries, it lay silent, covered in sand, forgotten, until the 1930s. German archaeologists began excavating the site. They uncovered the platform, the columns, the carvings, and they realized what they had found: a masterpiece of ancient architecture, a symbol of a lost empire. In 1979, Persepolis became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Today, people can visit the ruins. You can climb the steps. You can walk among the broken columns. For the people of Iran, Persepolis is more than ruins. It is history. It is the memory of a great empire.